You probably heard this advice your entire life. Just save your money. Save for the future. Save for retirement. Save for a rainy day. And to be fair, saving money is important. But here's something that always puzzled me. If saving money alone made people rich, then millions of hardworking Americans who save every month would retire wealthy. Teachers, nurses, engineers, and accountants who save diligently every month would all be millionaires by retirement. Yet, that's not what we see in the real world. Most of them work hard. They try to save. And still, many reach their 50s or 60s wondering why their finances never really took off. It's a bit like trying to win a car race by pushing the car instead of turning on the engine. You're putting in effort. You're moving forward. But you're missing the thing that actually makes the car go fast. My name is Chris, and I spent a lot of time studying how money actually works and why so many people work their entire lives but never seem to get ahead financially. If you want to truly understand how money works, not just the basic advice we hear everywhere, make sure you subscribe to Chris Finance. On this channel, we break down the systems behind wealth so you can make smarter financial decisions over time. I want to be clear about something. Saving money is not the problem. In fact, saving money is the first step toward financial stability. But saving money alone is a little like storing seeds in a jar. They're safe, but they're not growing. And the people who eventually build real wealth understand something most people never get taught. Money doesn't grow because you save it. Money grows because you put to work. And once you understand that difference, the entire conversation around wealth starts to look very different. Because the real question isn't just how much you save. The real question is, what is your money doing after you save it? And that brings us to one of the biggest traps people fall into when trying to build wealth. Let's paint a picture that probably feels familiar to a lot of people. Someone decides they want to get serious about their finances, so they open a savings account. They cut back on eating out. Maybe they cancel a few subscriptions they barely use. Every month, they move a little bit of money into savings and watch that number slowly grow. At first, it feels great. You look at the balance and think, okay, I'm finally getting ahead. And to be fair, that feeling is important. Learning to save money builds discipline. It creates a safety net. It helps you avoid financial disasters when life throws surprises your way. But here's where things start to get interesting. Saving money is a little like storing seeds in a jar. You're protecting them. You're keeping them safe. You're making sure they don't get eaten or wasted. But if those seeds stay in the jar forever, they never turn into anything bigger. They never grow into trees. And money behaves in almost the same way. When money just sits in a savings account, it's safe, but it's also mostly idle. Meanwhile, something else is quietly working in the background. Inflation. Now, inflation sounds like one of those boring economic words that only shows up in textbooks, but in reality, it affects almost every dollar you own. Inflation simply means that over time, the cost of things tend to go up. Groceries get more expensive. Rent goes up. Cars cost more. Healthcare costs more. The same $100 that bought a week of groceries 10 years ago might barely cover half of that today. So if your money is just sitting in a savings account earning maybe 1% or 2% interest, but inflation is rising at 3% for percent or sometimes even higher, something strange happens. Your money is technically growing, but your purchasing power is shrinking. Imagine someone saves $500 a month for 30 years. That's serious discipline. That's the kind of consistency financial advisors praise all the time. By the end of those 30 years, they would save around $180,000. Now, that's not a small amount of money. But here's the catch. After 3 decades of inflation, that $180,000 might not have nearly the same buying power it would have had when they first started saving. It's like climbing a ladder that's slowly sinking into the ground. You're going up, but the ground beneath you is also moving. And this is where a lot of people start feeling confused. They're doing what they were told to do. They're saving. They're being responsible. They're avoiding reckless spending. Yet somehow it still feels like the financial finish line keeps moving further away. That's because saving money solves one problem: spending discipline. But building wealth requires solving a second problem that most people don't fully understand yet: Your money eventually has to stop sitting still and start working. Because once money starts working, something remarkable begins to happen. Instead of you doing all the effort, your money begins to help carry the load. And that shift from saving money to putting money to work is where the real engine of wealth starts to appear. So if saving money alone isn't the engine that builds wealth, what is? To understand this, we need to talk about something that wealthy people focus on constantly, even if they don't always say out loud. Assets. Now, assets might sound like one of those intimidating finance words that belongs in a business school classroom, but the idea behind it is actually very simple. An asset is anything that puts money into your pocket or grows in value over time. That could be stocks. It could be real estate. It could be a business. It could even be something like a retirement investment account. In other words, assets are things that work for you financially. And once you understand this concept, the difference between saving money and building wealth becomes much clearer. Saving money is like parking your car in the garage. Your car is safe. Nothing bad is happening to it, but it's also not going anywhere. Investing in assets, on the other hand, is like putting that car on the highway. Now it's moving. Now it's covering distance. Now it has a potential to take you somewhere much further than you could reach on foot. Let's look at a simple example. Alex and Jude start their financial journey at the same time. Both of them manage to set aside $500 every month. Alex saves that money in a basic savings account. Jude takes that same $500 and invests into assets that historically grow over time, things like diversified stock market investments. Now, historically, the U.S. stock market has averaged somewhere around 7 to 10% per year over long periods. Some years are higher. Some years are lower, but over decades, that range has been fairly consistent. So what happens after 30 years? Alex, who simply saved the money, might end up with roughly $180,000, give or take depending on interest. But Jude, who invested that same $500 every month with an average 8% return, could end up with over $700,000. Same monthly contribution, same time period, but dramatically different outcomes. It's almost like planting a tree. If you plant a seed in the ground and give it enough time, something amazing happens. That seed doesn't just sit there. It grows. And eventually that one tree can produce hundreds, sometimes thousands of new seeds. That process is what the financial world calls compound growth. And compounding is one of the most powerful forces in wealth building. Albert Einstein supposedly called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world, because compounding turns time into your financial partner. At first, the growth seems slow. It's like watching paint dry. But over longer periods of time, the numbers start accelerating in a way that surprises most people. Your money starts earning returns, and then those returns start earning returns. It's like a snowball rolling down a hill. At the beginning, it's small, but as it rolls, it gathers more snow, becomes heavier, and starts growing faster and faster. Now here's the interesting part. When you look at people who eventually build serious wealth, most of them aren't just saving large amounts of money. They're owning assets that compound over time. They own pieces of businesses. They own investments. They own things that grow. In other words, they move from simply working for money to owning things that make money. And once that shift happens, something remarkable begins to change. Instead of every dollar coming only from your job, some of it begins coming from your assets. And when that happens, the entire game of wealth building starts to look very different. But here's the part that surprises a lot of people. Even when someone understands the importance of investing, there's still a huge mistake many people make right after they start. A mistake that can quietly slow down their wealth building journey for years. And fixing that mistake brings us to the next part of the story. Now, once people discover the power of investing, something interesting usually happens. They get excited. Suddenly, they're watching investing videos, reading articles about the stock market, checking financial apps like they're checking the weather. And before long, they start trying to pick the perfect investment. This stock is going to explode. This company is the next big thing. This crypto project is going to change the world. And sometimes those things do work out. But here's the problem. focusing only on what to invest and can distract people from something much more important, the system behind investing. Think about it like trying to bake a cake. Most people obsess over the flavor. Chocolate, vanilla, red velvet. But if the oven temperature is wrong, it doesn't matter how good the ingredients are. The cake still comes out terrible. Wealth works in a surprisingly similar way. Many people spend all their time looking for the next great investment, when the real secret is building a financial system that allows your investments to grow consistently over time. Let's break down what that system usually looks like. First comes income, the money you earn from your job, business, or profession. Then comes saving, which gives you the fuel to invest. After that comes investing in assets that grow or produce income. And then comes the most powerful ingredient of all, time, because time allows compounding to work its magic. Here's a simple way to think about it. Imagine you plant a tree. If you dig it up every few weeks to check whether it's growing, that tree will never survive. But if you plant it, water it, and leave it alone for years, one day you look up and realize it's taller than your house. Investing works the same way. The people who build the most wealth are often not the ones chasing the newest opportunity every month. They're the ones who quietly stick to a system. They earn, they save, they invest, and then they repeat that process again and again, year after year. It's not flashy. It's not exciting. In fact, if you watch their financial life day to day, it might even look a little boring. But boring systems are often the ones that build extraordinary results. Because while some people are trying to get rich quickly, others are quietly allowing time and compounding to do the heavy lifting. And eventually, that difference starts to show. The interesting thing is that when you step back and look at people who achieve financial independence, their stories usually follow a similar pattern. They didn't just save money. They built a machine that allowed their money to grow. And once that machine is running long enough, something fascinating starts to happen. Your money begins generating more money than your effort alone ever could. And when that moment arrives, the way you think about saving, investing, and wealth changes forever. Which brings us to the final piece of this puzzle, the real lesson behind why saving money alone will never make you rich and what actually does. So when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, something interesting becomes clear. Saving money was never meant to be the finish line of financial success. It was only meant to be the starting line. Saving money is like building a launch pad. It gives you stability. It gives you breathing room. It keeps small financial problems from turning into disasters. But the launch pad itself doesn't go anywhere. The rocket does. And in the world of money, that rocket is investing and ownership. Because the people who build significant wealth over time usually aren't just storing money somewhere safe. They're putting money into things that grow, produce income, or increase in value over time. Stocks, businesses, real estate, retirement investment accounts, assets that slowly expand while they sleep. In other words, they move from a system where their time produces money to a system where their money produces money. And that's one of the biggest mindset shifts in personal finance. Because if your only strategy is saving money from your paycheck, there's always going to be a ceiling. You only have so many hours in a day. You only have so much income coming in. But when your money starts working through investments, something powerful begins to happen. Growth becomes less dependent on how hard you work and more dependent on how well your money is positioned to grow. It's a little like planting a forest instead of stacking firewood. Stacking firewood requires constant effort. Planting trees requires patience at first, but over time, the forest begins expanding on its own. And that's how wealth is usually built in the real world. Not through one lucky investment, not through chasing the latest financial trend, but through a simple system repeated consistently over time. Earn money, save some of it, invest it into assets, let compounding do its job, and give the process enough time to work. Most people who eventually reach financial independence didn't discover some secret trick. They simply stopped treating saving as a destination and started using it as fuel for the wealth-building engine. Now, if this video helped you see money from a different perspective, go ahead and hit the like button, because that tells YouTube to show this video to more people who might need it. And if you enjoy learning about investing, wealth building, and how money really works, make sure you subscribe to Chris Finance. Because on this channel, the goal isn't to hype the next big investment trend. It's to help you understand the systems behind money so you can make smarter financial decisions over time. And once you start understanding those systems, managing money stops feeling confusing and starts feeling a whole lot more powerful.